If I ask you about horror games, what comes to your mind? Resident Evil? Amnesia? Maybe even Outlast? One such game is Silent Hill, which has spawned one of the most celebrated video game horror franchises of all time. In fact, it is still an ongoing series to this day. Silent Hill F just came out last year, and a new game has already been announced that will be coming out later this year. With nearly 3 decades of games, books, movies, and now the remake, how well does the very first Silent Hill hold up? Is it still an enjoyable game that the fans of Silent Hill, both new and old, can go back to? Or have the recent releases in the franchise made it a relic of the past? To find that out, I went back and played the first Silent Hill myself. I had been wanting to play the Silent Hill games for a very long time, but for one reason or another, I never did get around to playing them. This time, however, I decided to fully commit to playing this game and have more than a few thoughts to share. With that, let's get into the actual game itself. Silent Hill was released in 1999 by Konami and developed by a group internally within the company who would later be called Team Silent. The basic setup of the game is that you have to play as Harry Mason trying to find his daughter after losing her in the titular town of Silent Hill, and along the way, you meet new people and uncover larger conspiracies hidden in the town. The first thing you will see upon turning the game on is an intro cutscene that I really like. The music is hauntingly beautiful, in the same way you would say about an empty castle, or more aptly, an abandoned cathedral. It shows Harry and his daughter Cheryl who are out on a trip to the town of Silent Hill, which is an interesting idea to say the least. And along the way, he sees a cop on a motorcycle who we will be meeting again shortly, so remember her, and a little further down the road, he sees a girl, causing him to swerve to avoid crashing into her, which causes him to lose control of the car and fall off a cliff, losing consciousness. Coming to, he finds his daughter missing and has to go out to find her, and here we get to move around in the actual town of Silent Hill. Firstly, you will notice as soon as you start playing that the game uses tank controls. Similar to Tomb Raider, pressing up on the D-pad moves your character in the direction they are facing, and the left and right buttons turn your character anti-clockwise and clockwise respectively. The second thing you will notice is that the town is foggy to the point you cannot make out more than 2 feet in front of you. This is important and I'll swing back to this later. Harry then spots his daughter Cheryl off in the distance and chases after her, ending up in some sort of fenced-off alleyway that feels very claustrophobic and unnerving and features a wheelchair and a bloody hospital bed. I really like how the camera moves throughout this section, making you feel a bit disoriented, like Harry would be feeling at this point. Moving deeper into the maze, at the very end, Harry comes across the mangled remains of a body and is attacked by 3 children-like monsters. Even running back all the way does not help, as the way inside the alley is now fenced off. Eventually, Harry succumbs to the attack and wakes up back inside a cafe where he meets the police officer we saw on the road earlier. Told you we would be meeting her again. She introduces herself as Sybil Bennett and, after some back and forth with Harry, hands him a gun and he sets off to find his daughter. Following clues, Harry ends up at the local school where he's transported into a nightmarish version of it and has to beat a boss so that he can return to the normal version again. Upon returning back to the normal version of the school, he hears church bells off in the distance, signaling that there might still be other people in this town. So he sets out to the church to get some answers. Heading there, he finds a priestess who tells him, quite cryptically in fact, he has to make his way to the hospital on the other end of town and gives him an artifact in the shape of a pyramid and the keys to the drawbridge leading to the different section of the town. Left with even more questions than answers, Harry has no choice but to set out to the hospital where he encounters other survivors, one of them being the director of the hospital, Dr. Michael Kaufman. In the middle of this, Harry is once again transported to the rusty fence nightmare world where he finds a picture of the girl he nearly ran over in the intro and sees that her name is Alessa. Later, he meets a nurse from the hospital by the name of Lisa Garland, and while talking to her, Harry has an intense headache and is suddenly brought back to the normal hospital room. Curious indeed. We once again meet with the priestess from the church who tells us that there is another church we must find and leaves us a key to an antique shop in town. Heading there, Harry reunites with Sybil and finds an altar at the very back of the shop. Still having more questions than answers, we try to go back to Sybil when
What the?
we seemingly find ourselves transported back to the hospital room somehow. There, we meet Lisa once again, who tells us about the history of the town of Silent Hill. We get transported back into the antique shop, but we are still in the other world, meaning Cheryl is gone as well. Even though we were just there, we have to get all the way back to the hospital with the added effort that you have to traverse through the other world this time. Fighting through a mall and a short boss fight, we find ourselves back at the hospital where we talk to Lisa, who points us in the direction of the lake through the waterworks. We also manage to get out of the other world by beating another boss. And the game has some mercy on us by having Harry arrive at the waterworks in a cutscene rather than us having to run the entire length of both maps. Unfortunately, the game's mercy does not last long, as it is time to go down into the sewers, because it would not be a video game from the 90s without the obligatory sewer section. I hate this part of the game with a passion. The enemies in this section are annoying, it's easy to get turned around in, and this entire thing is just filler, as Harry only uses this to get to the resort area near the lake. Over there, we are finally reunited with Sybil in a boat along with Dahlia. There, they each get their own mission and set off. Harry has to go to the lighthouse, while Sybil has to go to the amusement park. Harry makes his way to the top of the lighthouse, where he sees the spirit of Alessa, who disappears right in front of him. With nothing else to do, he decides to join Sybil at the amusement park. This takes us through the... Are you kidding me? Another sewer section? Thankfully, it is short, and we quickly reach the park. We find Sybil, but it turns out she got possessed, so Harry has to fight and eventually kill her. Leaving Sybil behind, Harry discovers Alessa again, and the pyramid-shaped object that Dahlia gave us activates, knocking her out, and Dahlia herself shows up to transport both Alessa and herself away in a flash of bright light. Harry wakes up back in the hospital with Lisa looking over him, and now I'll have to get into spoiler territory, so skip to this time so you can avoid them. It turns out the town of Silent Hill houses a cult of sorts named the Order, and that the cult tried using Dahlia's daughter Alessa to reincarnate the god of the cult through her, but it did not go exactly as planned. Alessa suffered severe burns in the process and was trapped in her burnt body and could not die due to having been rendered immortal as a result of the soul of the cult's deity within her. Dr. Kaufman would then blackmail Lisa to take care of Alessa by having Lisa be addicted to the drugs he peddled, which caused Lisa a lot of mental anguish. During this, Alessa's soul would also split into two beings, one being her horribly burned form, and the other turning into Cheryl, who Harry and his wife found all those years ago and have been raising. Lisa would also discover that she had been dead the whole time, having died sometime before the start of the game. By coming to Silent Hill, the two forms of Alessa are able to merge back into one by the actions of the cult, but Dr. Kaufman intervenes and causes Alessa to morph into a demonic entity who Harry is able to fight off. The structure begins collapsing, and the dying form of Alessa gives Harry the reincarnated version of herself and points him to the way out of there. Dr. Kaufman gets his well-deserved comeuppance as well when Lisa emerges to drag him to his doom. Harry, meanwhile, is finally able to leave the town of Silent Hill behind. Silent Hill actually has multiple endings, and the game can play slightly different depending on your choices. The way I described it is how I played the game myself. Depending on your choices, Cheryl can either live or die, and Dr. Kaufman may not even show up in the ending of the game. My only complaint with this is that while the decision to save Cheryl is a bit more straightforward, as you just have to remember to collect one item when you're in the hospital, the part to getting Dr. Kaufman to show up is incredibly convoluted. It starts with you having to go unprompted to a shop in the resort area and follow a bunch of clues, taking you across multiple locations, ending with you finding a vial in the gas tank of a motorcycle that Dr. Kaufman shows up and takes for himself. He later uses this vial to stop the split souls of Alessa from merging. My only question is, how are you supposed to know this? This is an easily missable thing, and they basically decides if you get the good or bad endings. A Sybil decision essentially gives you an alternate version of the good or bad endings. There is another ending as well that is only accessible on your second playthrough called the UFO ending that is even more convoluted, and I have yet to go back and replay the game to unlock the ending. I will close out by saying this game has a decent amount of replayability to it, as on your second playthrough, you can get newer weapons and the previously stated UFO ending. I will be playing it again someday. The presentation of the game is done beautifully with tiny little details that culminate together to give the player a sense of unease that persists throughout the game. Locations that should feel familiar, such as the school or the hospital, feel eerie upon entering, but you cannot quite put a finger on why that is, and this extends to all areas of the game. They have truly managed to craft a haunting atmosphere despite the limited hardware. In fact, I would say that the limitations of the PlayStation help make this game scarier, as the low polygon aesthetic always feels uncanny and is probably why many indie horror games still use a similar art style. The limitation of the console is also what gives us the most iconic part of Silent Hill that may as well be a whole character in and of itself: the fog. It was born out of a need to hide the PlayStation's low draw distance and has the added benefit of making the open areas of the overworld also have a claustrophobic feeling to them. Another thing the game uses perfectly is dark areas. One of the very first items you will receive is the flashlight, and it remains equipped on Harry throughout the game. The lighting of the dark areas still blows my mind as to how they were able to get it looking this good back on the PlayStation 1. One small thing I discovered about the flashlight is that you can manually turn it on and off with its own dedicated button. I don't know why this exists. At first I thought it might have limited use, or maybe there's an enemy later in the game that is sensitive to light. No, none of these things. It just exists. I'm not complaining or anything. It isn't as if I'm saying the game is ruined for me, but it is a small curiosity that I discovered. Of course, the true horror star of the show is the Otherworld, this rusty metal hellhole place that you get trapped in on regular intervals throughout the game, which are some of my favorite sections in it. You can really tell the game designers put a lot of effort into making the Otherworld section feel very alien to you, as even though they are just rusted metal fences, they still feel otherworldly. It actually extends to the level design as well, with things like the Otherworld Hospital or the school have distinct feeling areas that navigating through them easier, and I really like the progression you can get in all of the mini areas, as when you make your way through all these mini areas in a larger area. A lot of the doors are locked upon first entering, but you can unlock them by the other side in order to create shortcuts between two areas of the map. The map system is actually very helpful and well crafted as well. I do get turned around quite a lot, so I had to check the map screen constantly to have my bearings, but I could navigate it easily using the maps the game gave us. They're quite easy to find as well, and one of my favorite little details of the game is that Harry will mark things on the map as he finds them with a red marker. It's not a game-changing difference, but just like in real life, it is the little things that count. The gameplay is actually quite different to the other horror games I've played so far. One of the most important distinctions between this game and Resident Evil is the fact that Silent Hill is not survival horror. Yes, it has tank controls, but none of the other tropes that I would say fall under survival horror are found here. There is no limited saving. Harry apparently has bottomless pockets in his trousers because he can carry every single item you find in the game at all times. So you're never in a position where an item you need right now is in an item box 4 floors away somewhere, and you have to backtrack. And the biggest difference being that Silent Hill is not shy about giving you ammo and healing items. You can easily stock over 30 healing items and enough ammo to arm a small militia, meaning you do not really have to ponder of whether or not you should kill an enemy in front of you. In my playthrough, I avoided all enemies in the overworld town, but essentially got rid of every single enemy indoors, especially the sewers. The puzzles are also a bit harder than your typical Resident Evil puzzle and require a bit more thinking. Saving occurs through notepads Harry can find throughout the game. Overall, the horror in this game is not derived from the sinking feeling of being caught off guard and dying and having to reload your save from a long time ago. It is mostly, as I hope I have made abundantly clear, comes from the creepy and unnerving atmosphere the game presents you with. The combat is actually my favorite aspect of the game. Harry can use a variety of melee weapons and also gets access to 3 firearms the handgun Sybil gave him, a shotgun, and a hunting rifle. It does not go crazy with the firearm variety, but each gun has a distinctive feel and use to them, which I appreciate. They have an effective range, which means that something like the handgun, you cannot snipe enemies across the room and need them to be at least medium range. Interestingly, Harry can also move while readying his gun, meaning you're not locked in place while firing your weapon. This helps tremendously when you're fighting groups of enemies, as you can quickly reposition yourself when enemies rush up to you while also firing at them. With all of these things, we have yet to talk about my favorite part of the combat, the instant kill. You see, when you down an enemy in Silent Hill, you can run up to their downed body and stomp or kick them to instantly kill them. Considering that the enemies go down in a few bullets, this means you do not really need to use your already overflowing ammo reserves, which did help contribute to the previously mentioned slaughter of every enemy indoors. The game, as I said, also features a large number of melee weapons, with my personal favorite being the hammer. It can knock enemies back and sometimes takes only 1 to 2 hits to kill. It feels incredibly satisfying to use, and all melee weapons are actual viable weapon choices, not just something to use in case of the lack of ammo, which, as I said, already has a high likelihood of never even happening. And I really appreciate that. Of course, that being said, it is not advisable to go around fighting every single enemy that comes up to you, since Silent Hill is a horror game, and sometimes the better option is to run away from the enemies, which is what I did in the overworld mostly. Another part of Silent Hill that has become iconic to the series is that the enemies in the game are manifestation of the emotions of a person. In the case of the first game, they're manifestation of the things in life that Alessa fears. Alessa was bullied while she was in school, so that manifested as the grey children that you encounter throughout the school and other areas. She is afraid of insects that has manifested itself as the roach-like creeper enemies. The prolonged stay at the hospital has left her with a deep-seated fear of the medical staff, so Harry has to fight off nurses and doctor-like enemies. I find it quite interesting, and it does mean that every new game would have newer enemies tailored to the protagonist of the game, which is a pretty neat idea overall. For this game, you can see that the enemy designs are a bit more low-key, with the fears being what most children would have, and I can appreciate the simplicity of it. The bosses in the game are quite a different story though. I love the lizard you fight towards the end of the school, mainly because there's a poem that gives you a hint on how to kill it quickly and easily. The other moth boss did not feel as great to me in both of its forms, as neither the design nor the actual fight stood out to me. They are perfectly serviceable boss fights, with nothing good or bad to really say about them. Cheryl, I would say, is probably the toughest boss in the game, as she can shoot Harry to knock him out and then double tap him, killing him. The fight can be ended at any point if you did collect the liquid in the hospital, so really how difficult the boss fight is ends up on whether or not you collected the item. The final boss can have 2 forms depending on whether or not you get Dr. Kaufman to throw the vial on Alessa, but they are essentially the same fight with similar lightning attack. This lightning attack can one-shot you if you're not at full health, but you can easily cheese it by simply pausing and healing in the middle of taking damage. Overall, some of the bosses in the game have unique design, and some do not. I would say Sybil is probably my favorite boss fight in the entire game. Silent Hill left me feeling a whole host of emotions. I felt accomplished at the fact I completed it, but saddened by the fact that Harry did in essence lose his daughter, but it is a game that sticks with you long after the credits have rolled. I have really enjoyed my time with it, and its legacy cannot be overstated. It spawned 2 sequels that were highly regarded, although the games that came out afterwards were not received as well. The series has been making a comeback though with the remake of Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill F being highly regarded. I'm excited to play the other 2 games in the trilogy myself, and as for this game, it is well deserving of its legacy. And I would say, as a person playing this in 2026, you will find something for you, as it captures a certain charm of this era of horror games that simply isn't around today. I would give this an 8.7 out of 10.